Today's video is brought to you by Ekster, the world's largest smart wallet brand. On March 31st, my niece had her first baby, which means I'm now a grand uncle for the first time. And man, does that make me feel old. Anyway, it got me thinking about what the future is going to be like for that little baby by the time she's 16 years old. And it really is remarkable when you start to think about it. So I want to talk about that some today. But also, I want to talk about Tesla's amazing Q1 2022 results. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So yes, I'm going to start with production numbers and talk a little bit about some trends and things like that with Tesla, because actually it tails into the second half of this video very nicely. So first of all, Tesla's Q1 2022 deliveries were 310,048 vehicles, and their production was 305,407 vehicles. And just for a quick reference, if we compare that to Q4 2021, which of course ended December 31st of 2021, they delivered 308,600 vehicles, which was slightly less, but they actually produced slightly more vehicles, which was 305,840. And then, of course, to make things really interesting, if we look back at Q1 of 2021, they produced 180,000 vehicles and delivered 184,800 vehicles. So while things were fairly flat between Q4 of 2021 and Q1 of 2022, 1 year ago, Tesla was producing 180,000 vehicles, and now they're doing 310,000 vehicles, or very, very close to double the number of vehicles they were doing just 1 year ago. That is really amazing. And what's even more amazing is that's not taking account of Giga Berlin, which just came online right before the end of the quarter, so maybe 1,000 cars from that. And of course, it's not taking account of Giga Texas, which will be coming online maybe on April 7th. I'm going to be in town, so I'm going to be enjoying the festivities. I still don't have a ticket to the Cyber Rodeo. So if anybody does happen to have a ticket, definitely hit me up on Twitter or email me. I would love to be able to go and see the factory. I saw it just about exactly a year ago from the outside, of course, and it was amazing. So I just would love to see the inside of the factory now just 1 year later on. So anyway, if you look at Q4 of 2021 versus Q1 of 2022, it was very, very flat between the two of them, and they actually produced slightly fewer cars. Now, there were a ton of headwinds. Elon Musk said, and he kind of asterisked this or italicized it, he said it was an exceptionally difficult quarter. And that's amazing because it's been nothing but difficult for the past 2 years with the pandemic and the chip shortage and everything like that. But I think particularly China going into lockdown and Tesla losing somewhere around 10 days of production time during the month of March has severely restricted the number of cars that Tesla could produce. Otherwise, I have a feeling they would have produced substantially more than they did last quarter. But anyway, so these kinds of things are bumps in the road and everything like that. But it definitely did affect Tesla, and so it looks really flat over the quarters. But of course, this is a short quarter because February only has 28 days, plus you're losing a bunch of production out of Shanghai during this time period. So the fact that they were basically flat between the two quarters is really, really amazing. And of course, usually demand goes way down in Q1 for any product, not just Tesla's. And in the past, of course, you'd see Q4 and then they'd bump down to Q1 and come back up again. But this quarter, they actually managed to deliver more cars than they did in Q4 of 2021, which was a record previously, of course. And then I expect, unless there are big shutdowns, given the fact that Berlin and Austin should produce some cars in the next quarter and really start to ramp up, we should see a significant increase in the amount of cars that are both produced and delivered next quarter. Yeah, gosh, I'm going to throw out a number of 350,000 approximately. Obviously, that depends a lot on what happens in Shanghai with the whole zero COVID lockdown kind of thing. But I think as long as Tesla is able to continue producing things in Shanghai without too many more lockdowns, and there are ramp ups of both Austin and Berlin, I'm thinking that we should see 350, maybe even 360,000 if we want to be really bullish. And finally, let's look at this really cool infographic from I Cannot Enough. This is trailing 12-month total global Tesla deliveries. And what that means is how many cars Tesla sold within the last 12 months. It doesn't divide up in calendar years, of course. What it does is it divides up in previous 12 months. And so when you look at Q1 of 2021, you see that they delivered about 596,000 vehicles, whereas this year they delivered 1,061,000 vehicles. And that means that Tesla's production and deliveries went up by about 45% year over year. That is just amazing that they're able to increase production at that level, especially given the crazy, crazy circumstances that are going on. And if you haven't looked at the rest of the auto industry, their sales were all depressed in Q1 of 2022. So the fact that Tesla is continuing to increase while the rest of the auto industry is going down down. We're clearly seeing the end of the ICE car era and the beginning of the BEVs, and Tesla is clearly riding that wave. So next quarter should be substantially better unless something major goes wrong, and then we should see just a continuing increase. And, you know, maybe by next year, by quarter one of 2023, we might see something closer to 1.5, 1.6 million cars delivered within the last calendar year. So those are the kind of numbers we're looking at. The cars, the factories, the technology, all of that stuff is really, really amazing. Speaking of super cool technology, I am super happy to talk about the Ekster Smart Wallet today. It is a beautiful premium leather wallet in a whole bunch of different colors. You can see here that it actually comes with a tracking device and its own little pocket to put it in. If you push the button on your app on your phone, it will ring on your wallet, and you can double click the tracker and find your phone too. So you can find your wallet and you can find your phone at all times. Very, very cool. In addition, and the coolest feature is you push the button and out pop your cards in order. It's really, really awesome. No more fumbling with your cards. You can just pick the one that you want right out of the list. You also have access to a money clip and room for a couple of other cards on the other side of the wallet fold out. It's great for organizing your daily life and slimming down what you carry around with you every day. The tracker, by the way, is solar powered. A couple of hours of sunlight will charge it up for about 3 months. And here's a cool little bonus. You can actually take selfies on your phone with the Ekster tracker. How cool is that? Check out the link in the description by April 12th and get 20% off an Ekster wallet, a tracker, or anything else you order on Ekster. All right, so now let's turn to my niece and let's think about what the world is going to be like in 2038, which is 16 years from now. I'm gonna be an old man by the time 2038 rolls around. But anyway, by the time she turns 16, which is, you know, traditionally the time that at least people in the United States are allowed to start driving and everything, what is the world going to look like? Well, first of all, and the most obvious thing is there's a very high degree of probability that she won't even get a driver's license when she turns 16. There's a really good chance that robo-taxis and the sort of robo-fleet, and again, whether this is Tesla or somebody else, I think it's going to be Tesla because I think they have a huge lead in all of this stuff. But, you know, let's say somebody comes out of the closet like Comma AI with their 0.001% chance of getting there. But, you know, whoever it is, Tesla or other people or combinations of all of this stuff, in 16 years, the odds that there won't be a massive robo-fleet in the United States and most other countries is really, really small. I think it's very highly likely that there will be a huge robo-taxi fleet out there, which just means that it's not all that necessary to get a driver's license. Now, yeah, a lot of people, especially in the United States, will probably consider getting one anyway because it's kind of a rite of passage, and we love our cars here, so people may continue to buy cars. But I think that that number of people is going to reduce a whole bunch. And when you think about it, like, let's say you're a 14-year-old, I mean, I'm thinking about like New York City or another large city where there's public transportation. Even like little 8, 9-year-olds, you know, they go to school and stuff like that on the subway nowadays. And in a city like that, the need to drive, the feel like, oh gosh, I've got to have a car in order to be a real person or something like that is much, much reduced. And that, of course, is very true in Europe and other places that have really good mass transportation. So in urban environments, it's already kind of that way. But when you have robo-taxis, I mean, you could send your kid to kindergarten or something like that if you're of that sort of mind. You don't have to trust them to public transportation. They walk out front of your apartment or your house, they get in the robo-taxi, the taxi takes them to school, drops them off right at the door and leaves. That's pretty safe. And so, you know, kids are going to grow up kind of knowing that they can use these cars. They'll be able to be mobile a long time before people are nowadays, right? You pretty much have to be 16. You have to have a license. You have to be able to drive. You have to have a car also, which, you know, costs a lot of money. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle before you're allowed to be very mobile and to be able to go places. That is going to be reduced significantly for everybody when robo-taxis are available. So, you know, a kid needs to go to soccer practice or something like that, or baseball practice. You just call up the robo-taxi and it takes them there. So you don't have to take time out of your busy day anymore as a parent in order to just drive them someplace and drop them off and come back and pick them up and drive it again. You know, there's all of that crazy, you know, soccer mom kind of thing where you end up spending a lot of time driving around just transporting your children to places. So that will be reduced. Kids will feel much more autonomous. They will be able to go out and do things without having to have parents around or older siblings to be able to drive them. So that is kind of an obvious outcome of this, is that kids are going to be more mobile at an earlier age, and they won't feel like they need to have a car or a driver's license in order to be an adult. And what that all means, of course, is that there will be fewer cars sold and that kids will kind of look at driving as, again, I liken it to horseback riding. I have a horse farm that's fairly near our house and our dogs walk by, you know, they love to look at the horses. But it's a curiosity, right? It's like, oh, cool, look at the people who ride horses. That's a cute thing. And it'll sort of be like that. It'll be like, oh, cool, look at those cute people that like to drive around themselves instead of having a robo-taxi do it for them. So it's going to kind of move towards that direction. Now, obviously, it won't be all the way there in 16 years, but it's going to be a lot of the way there. Another piece of the puzzle that's really interesting that Dean, one of my Patreon patrons, mentioned is that housing is going to change too, because one of the big things about urban environments is that you have to reserve a lot of places to have your car parked, right? So it's apartments for your car, or parking lots as people call them, or parking decks or something. As you don't need cars that have to be parked and people don't own as many cars in more and more urban environments, that increases the amount of space that's available for housing. I mean, even for me who lives in a suburban environment, I've got a 2-car garage. If I didn't own a car, I could convert that garage space, which is fairly large, right? It fits 2 cars in it, plus some lawnmowers and things like that. I could convert that into an art studio or a YouTube studio or whatever. I would have a lot of extra space. And then if you go into a more urban environment where there's all these parking decks that are built that take up a big amount of space where there could be apartments or other types of living quarters, you suddenly enable a lot more housing to be out there in the world. And of course, enabling more housing will also push down the competition for housing, which will allow, hopefully, housing prices to become somewhat cheaper. I mean, right now we're in a crazy bubble and everything's just going up and up and up. But we could see that in the future that could reverse, where there's more housing available, there's not such a crunch, and it's a little more reasonable for people to be able to find housing, whether they purchase it or rent it. The third thing I thought about was AI as a normal thing, right? Kids, like if you imagine 16 years ago, I have a 14-year-old son who's almost 15, geez. So, you know, you think about when he was actually born a couple of months after the iPhone was released. And I think the iPhone was released just about 14 years ago, like really close to now. It was early April, but I don't remember the exact date. Anyway, so it's kind of wild to think about that. He's 14 years old, almost 15, and he grew up in a world where every phone was an iPhone, essentially, right? By the time he was conscious, iPhone and Android with the flat screen and all of this kind of stuff, right? You know, just big flat tablet, that's the normal thing now. Of course, I grew up with landlines, but even kids who are just a little older than him, like 5 or 6 years older, like my older sons, they grew up in worlds where they had the little chiclet key things of like Blackberries and Palm Pilots and stuff. So, you know, they even saw that transition. So if you imagine, like, his world is completely different because there was never anything that didn't look like an iPhone in his life. And I predict that AI is going to be very much like that by the time my grandniece is 16 years old. It's just going to be one of those things where you walk into any room or any object or your phone or your computer or whatever, then we're already headed this way. But you basically just have a conversation with your computer, with your phone, with your smartwatch, with a thing that's implanted in your brain. I don't know. But anyway, so all of this stuff that's already really available to us is going to be available in even more convenient packaging. You won't have to ask such specific questions anymore. You can just sort of ask more general questions. You could ask the AI in the future, you could say like, hey AI, tell me about the Battle of Waterloo in 5 minutes. It will come up with a package, it will figure out how to do that in 5 minutes, and it will communicate that to you, right? It'd be that kind of thing. It'll be kind of weird for us content creators if you imagine maybe 16 years in the future, I could say, hey AI, create a presentation about what AI is going to be like in 16 years from now, and it will do the whole thing, come up with graphics and all of the text and all that stuff, and I'll click upload to YouTube 2.0 and it will just come out, right? So I think that we're going to see AI incredibly integrated into our lives, and we will be very, very dependent on a sort of co-evolution with artificial intelligence, which is one of the reasons why I think that we might actually have implants in our heads by then, because the baud rate, the data communication transfer rate between human beings and computers is really, really slow right now. So if we can figure out how to make that faster, that's all to the plus. So I think we very well in 16 years could see neural implants for more than just disabled people. We could see it for people who just want faster communication with their computing devices. And of course, that means we will truly be becoming cyborgs at that point, which is kind of cool. And then the final thing is Mars, right? Elon Musk is really, really focused on getting to Mars, and I think that that's going to be happening. It probably won't happen as fast as he wants it to, but by the time my niece is 16, she could start thinking about a potential career, right? Go to college, get an astrophysics degree or something like that, and then go to Mars once she graduates. That could be an actual career path that she could select. And it could even be a permanent or semi-permanent settlement on the planet by then. So that kind of stuff could be coming along. I think 16 years is pushing it a little bit. But, you know, within her lifetime, right, by the time she's 30 or something like that, that's 2052, there's really, really good odds by then that that could be a reasonable thing to do, and a lot of people could do it, right? If Starship becomes highly reusable, the cost of getting into orbit goes way, way down. The cost of getting into Mars goes way, way down, which is Elon's main goal in life. Beyond Tesla, beyond any of these other things, getting off this planet and getting to Mars and setting up Earth 2.0 on Mars is Elon Musk's biggest life goal, and he said that very, very clearly over and over. So I think come hell or high water, as long as he has money and energy, that's what it's going to be focused on for the most part. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see people actually going to Mars. Now, whether my niece personally does that or not doesn't really matter. I'm just saying it'll be an option for her. It certainly wasn't an option for me when I was 16 years old growing up, even though I really, really desperately wanted to be an astronaut. But it will, I think, be an option for her. And of course, when they go there, they're going to be going there with artificial intelligence, with Tesla bots or some evolution of Tesla bots, and it will be a kind of co-evolved society between these robotic AI creatures and human beings, and they're going to start to become creatures. They're going to start to have some sort of agency in all of this. Whether we'll see the AI singularity by 16 years from now, by 2038, I don't know. I kind of predict it'll be happening in the 2040s somewhere, at a rough guess. But, you know, this nonlinear acceleration of artificial intelligence's capabilities makes it so I might be pretty far off. Again, I might be thinking more of a linear path and it's going like this. So who knows? But, you know, these are all things that are quite possible by the late 2030s. So that's pretty remarkable to think about all of that. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed thinking about what Tesla is doing in terms of creating cars right now. And I also hope you found it really interesting and a little bit mind-blowing to think about what the world is going to be like by the time my grandniece is 16 years old. It's going to be a really, really different place. I hope I'm around to see it and quite cognizant of what's going on still. Maybe we'll get some age treatments and be able to live a little bit longer. Anyway, if you did enjoy the episode, please do like it, because that's how YouTube knows to share it with other people. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much. You're really helping with this whole trip to Austin. And by the way, we actually have something set up for Wednesday afternoon where we're going to have a little meet and greet. If you want to join the team before then, definitely check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have Tesla Bot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And again, thank you to Ekster Wallets for sponsoring today's video. Check out the link in the description to see how you can save 20% on your next wallet. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.